So let's edit some black and white photos that I took while I was up in Kansas City photographing my mom. Now, I can already hear the film photography purists out there saying,
"You're not really a true film photographer if you're not processing your own film and printing your own images."
Well, maybe that's true, but who really cares? Listen, I love film photography and I love winding the film on the reels in a darkroom, and I love printing my own photos. And I can honestly say there is nothing like watching your own photograph come to life in the developer bath. But not only do the people viewing your images not care, or the people buying your art, they don't care either. You may have limitations of money and space that are really preventing you from diving 100% into film photography. And that's okay, because this is your art and this is my art, and we can do whatever the hell we want. By the way, show the like button some love so we can satisfy YouTube's algorithm. And if you like photography as much as I do, subscribe so we can hang out together more. Okay, I've got 3 images that I took with my Hasselblad 503CX on Ilford Delta 100 film. They've been processed, they've been scanned. Now it's time that we jump into Lightroom and do some editing. All right, so I like to start my edits, everything that I do, regardless of whether it's on digital or film, I like to start my edits in Lightroom. So these are the 3 images that I've chosen from the Ilford Delta 100. It's the first time I've shot this roll of film. It's a fantastic film. I love this film and the quality of the images that it produces. So an old Dodge truck that I found in Kansas City. I love this truck. Absolutely love this truck. And then a Mercedes, covered Mercedes there, and then an old machine shop, which was kind of cool. Anyway, going back over here to my Dodge truck, I'm going to go up to develop, and everything goes really, really quick. I don't do a whole lot here, either Lightroom or Photoshop. So what I'm going to do first is I'm just going to drop my exposure down, and I'm just looking at the image to see what I like, and I'm looking probably right about there. And for me, what I'm doing is I'm looking right in this area right here for, I guess, the midtones. I'm just looking to bring those down. And then I'm going to bring my shadows up. And so I want to bring more detail back into these shadow areas. I'm not so concerned about under the truck here, but I just want to bring some detail back into the shadows. So I'm liking that right there is pretty good. And then I'm going to bring my highlights down just a little bit, just to, I don't know, balance everything out. And then I'm going to bring my blacks down, make my blacks a little bit blacker, which I like. And then my whites up just a little bit, just create a little bit more contrast there. And then I'm just going to dehaze. I'm going to bring my haze up just a little bit, just a skosh on this one. I just like the haze. To me, it gives it more of a film quality when I bring that haze up just a tiny bit. And then I don't really need to sharpen this, but I do like to push the sharpening up just a little bit here, and then luminance up, and then remove chromatic aberrations. I don't know if I get chromatic aberrations in film. If you know, leave a comment below. It's just something that I'm used to doing, that process with my digital photography, so I do it with this as well. Can't hurt. It's not like it's changing anything. All right, so I'm going to go over here to the Mercedes. I'm going to do basically the same thing. I'm just going to bring my exposure down just a little bit. Bring that down, and I'm liking that right about there. And then I'm going to bring my highlights up. I'm losing a little bit of detail down in this area here that I want to bring back into the image. So I'm going to bring my shadows up, and that's kind of like dodging. So to bring the shadows up like that is really like you're dodging the image in those specific shadow areas. And then when I bring my highlights down, that's like I'm burning in the highlights there in the tarp that's over this car. And then I'm going to bring my blacks. I'm going to make those just a little bit more black. And then my whites just a little bit more white. And I'm digging that. I might bring my exposure up just a tiny bit there. And I don't know these numbers. I'm not really looking at the numbers. I'm looking at the image and telling what I like. And then I'm just going to bring my haze up just a tiny bit, just like that. And then I'm just going to bring my sharpening, click there, remove chromatic aberrations. I'm good there. And then over here on the machine shop, I'm going to go up and do the same thing. So looks like to me that the sky is blown out just a little bit. And this was all just taken with average metering for gray scale, you know, the medium gray. So that's really what it's exposing for. But it looks like the sky is just blowing out a little bit too much. The doors might be just blowing out a little bit too much. So I just want to bring my exposure down. And thankfully with film, we have a little bit of latitude where we can play with that part of it. So I'm liking that maybe right in there. So that's negative 0.85. I'm going to bring my shadows up because I'm losing a little bit too much in this area there. So I'm just going to bring my shadows up in there, right about there. And then my highlights down. I'm liking that right there. And I'm going to make my blacks a little bit blacker and my whites a little bit whiter just to give it a little bit more contrast. And I'm liking that pretty good right there. Let's bring up the haze just to see what that does overall. And I kind of like that, how that brings up the shadows just a tiny bit more. I like that. And then I'm just going to come down here to the sharpening, noise, luminance, and remove chromatic aberrations. So that really is all that I do in Lightroom. And really what it comes down to is just a burning and dodging process. So where the burning and dodging process when you're actually printing film looks much different than it does in digital editing like this, but it's basically the same concept that we're darkening our lights, our highlights, or our lighter areas, and we're bringing up detail in our shadow area. So really it's just a burning and dodging process that we use sliders to ultimately accomplish. Now that I have my images edited just the way I like them in Lightroom, I'm going to pull them over into Photoshop so I can put that film-like border around the edges and then do just a couple of other minor tweaks. Also, I'd love to know how you're editing your film photography, so in the comments below, let me know. All right, so here we are in Photoshop for the second part of this edit. Again, this is going to go really fast. I've already created a template. Now I want to be clear that everything that I do in here pretty much could easily be done in Lightroom. It's just the process that I started when I was kind of experimenting and it's just kind of stuck. So odds are this process will change as well over the next coming months, and then I'll have to record another video to show what I'm doing then. So anyway, I've created this kind of template here that has blacks, light or dark, contrast, desaturation, tone, vignette, and then ultimately the frame here that I like to add that gives it that little kind of film-ish quality to it. So that's what we're looking at. I'm just going to bring my Dodge image here over, and we're just going to drop that right in the middle here. And I'm going to go ahead and Command or Control T and bring this down because I liked the full frame part of this. I want to cut off as little as possible on these sides. Sometimes I do cropping here in this part of it, but on this case, I love this truck. When I photographed it, I was standing as far back as I could get against a really, really busy road that was a highway, and I couldn't really go any further back. And I'm using an 80mm on the Hasselblad 503CX, and this is as much as I could get. But to be really honest with you, I think I like it better like this. It's kind of like looking at a Victoria's Secret's catalog. It leaves a little bit of to the imagination of what's going on in front and back. So totally like this crop here. All right, so then I'm going to come in here and I just want to make my blacks, I don't know, a little bit blacker. And these are really, really subtle. In my experience with editing, and I've done a buttload of editing with digital photography and compositing, my experience is that you need to do steps very subtly. And over a period of many, many different steps, you can kind of mold this image, knead this image into something that is perfect and beautiful. And then light or dark, I don't know. We'll just look at it. I like to click on and off of that. Dark definitely don't know. It looked kind of good dark. I'm just going to keep it off. And so I don't even need to go light or dark. And then contrast, I usually like to bump up the contrast minimum 25%. In some cases, I like to go with 50%. And all that percentage is what the opacity really is on that. So you can see my S curve here. That gives me, it's not really an S curve, but I'm bringing my darks up and my whites up. And then also you can see down here on the same thing. And so the only difference between these two layers is one is at 50% and one is at 25%. They're the exact same curves that we put on this graph here on the curves graph. And then I'm going to go ahead and click that. So I like having a little bit of contrast bumped up. Desaturation isn't really desat, but you'll see that it gives it just the slightest hint of tone. And I use a color layer for that. So if you go in here, you can see that I give it a little bit of a brown tone, but really close down into the blacks there. So it's a very, very dark brown. It almost gives it kind of a little bit of a sepia, just an extraordinarily small 13% here that you can see sepia tone. So if I were going to bring this percentage all the way up, that's what it would look like if I brought it all the way up. But I like to bring it down to about 13%, and that looks perfect to me. Tone, I don't even mess with tones on black and white. I don't like to bring in too much more tone. I mean, we already did that with that desaturation layer, but tone, you can see here that I have this kind of a yellowish color here on my color layer. And it's at 4%, but at 4% is enough that I can see that tonal difference. And I don't know if you can see it there on your monitor, but I can mine. And then vignette, of course, I always like to add just a little bit of vignette, a very subtle vignette around the edges. And that is the image. So that is the old Dodge truck. If I could go buy this Dodge truck today, I absolutely would. I love this truck. All right, so going over to the Mercedes, we're going to basically do the same thing. So I'm going to bring that over here and then drop that in there and then just bring that down. And so then we can start all over here on this and we can go into our blacks and just bring our blacks down. Let's go ahead and I don't mind this cropping. I don't want to go full frame because I don't necessarily like this car over here, and I want to pay a lot more attention to the Mercedes. Might be able to turn it just a tiny bit. No, I liked it back there. So about right there is good. We'll go with that. Light or dark, I think I want to lighten this up just a little bit. Let's go ahead and see what contrast does. That might bring it up enough. Click on and off just to see. I could go either way on that, light or dark on that, or light or no. Desaturation, we'll do that. I call it desat. It's just a tiny little bit of tone. If you're looking at it in a color image, it does desaturate it just the slightest amount. No tone, and then vignette, we'll add a vignette into that one. And I'm liking that there pretty good. In Lightroom, I might have been able to bring these lights up just a little bit more here by burning this in. And I might do that on my final image, but I'm okay with it right there. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and we'll bring our building over and we'll give our building a little bit of Photoshop magic as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and bring this crop closer back to the full frame. Let's bring that over right about there. Let's bring it down. That's pretty good right there. I'm liking that. And then I'm going to go ahead and just turn everything off. And then let's go back here to our blacks. And that I like that subtle black. You know, it just gives it a nice pop of black. And so that's, again, just a curves layer. I bring the middle gray area up into the black and just deepen those blacks just a tiny, tiny bit there. So I like that. And then our light and dark, I don't feel the need to do that. So I'm going to leave that turned off. My contrast, I definitely like to pump just a little bit of contrast in just about every image. Again, I could do this in Lightroom, but I don't know. I just like being able to turn it on and off and quickly go through. Since I'm going to bring it in Photoshop anyway and do the frame, I might as well go ahead and do this stuff too. DSAT, do that. Although I could go without it. I don't like the tone in this one quite so much. So let's go without it. And then our vignette looks pretty good there. Might be able to bring that down just a little bit. So we're at 10% right now. So I'm just going to bring that down just a little bit, maybe go to 7% right there. All right. So that is my process in Photoshop, really just primarily to put this border around the image and then just make a couple little small little subtle tweaks to it that really bring this image to life and make it pop. And that wraps up these 3 film photos that I edited in Lightroom and Photoshop. As you can see, while this is mostly a digital,
it is largely a digital editing process,
I do try to keep it as realistic to film as possible. Also, I've got to say that I absolutely love this Ilford Delta 100 film. It's such a beautiful film. All right, so I hope you enjoyed coming with me behind the scenes to see how I edit my black and white film photography in Lightroom and Photoshop. And remember, there's only one right way to edit your film photography, and that is your way. Let me know in the comments below how you go about editing your film photography, and I'll see you next time on the Pixels and Grain Photo Show.